What's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. We got another video for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the On Cloudmonster. Going to be giving you my long-term thoughts on this shoe. Let's get into it. So I've had this shoe for about 8-9 months now, done about 130 kilometers on it. You can see the Strava screenshot here showing that the distance I've covered exactly. And I want to give you my thoughts, my experiences with this shoe. So we'll start with the specifications, okay? This is a shoe that weighs 275 grams as per the On website. For a men's, I believe it's a size 8. It's got a drop of 6 millimeters. That's the difference between the height of the heel and the forefoot, and the actual height of the heel, the stack height, is 30 millimeters. It goes it sells at about $170. That's the current price online. Very rarely do you get a discount on this shoe. It does usually sell at about its MSRP, which in the US is about $170. So first impressions with this shoe here. It's not been my first shoe from the brand On. The first shoe I had from them was the original Cloud Boom. I don't have the shoe with me anymore. I have since retired it, and I no longer own the shoe. But I did run my first ever half marathon in it. That's this t-shirt right here, the Nairobi City Marathon, which was in the month of May last year, May 2022. So I had used that shoe extensively. I've also got a second shoe from On, which I was given as a gift. I don't know what's the exact model of this, but in comparison to that original Cloud Boom, it's got a very similar type of foam used here at the base, similar kind of stack, similar feel on foot. I think the difference is that this doesn't have the speed board, but just in terms of general feel, it's not too different from that Cloud Boom. So having had a couple of On shoes before I got the Cloudmonster, my first impressions with this shoe, especially after having owned and run in 2 previous shoes from On, was that firstly, for its size, this thing felt light. I think it's actually lighter than this guy here, even though it's quite a chunky looking shoe at first glance. So it does feel really light. When you first put it on your foot, it just feels super comfortable. The materials used in this shoe, very high quality. I think the upper, the type of padding used here, the general material and feel of the upper, the way the tongue sits around your foot. I've got no complaints with the general feel on the foot. It's a very comfortable shoe the first time you put it on. What you also notice the first time you take a step in it, just within the shop floor or your first few steps before you actually start running in it, is that compared to previous shoes from On, the pods here tend to feel a little more springy. They got a little more bounce or give to them. You can actually feel the compression in these pods here as you just put your weight on the shoe, or as you take a step forward, you can feel a bit of the movement happening in here, which is a nice feeling when you first put it on. It's also a very good looking shoe. I think in any of the colors that you buy it in, it is a very cool shoe. Something that I noticed immediately that I didn't quite like so much, or I think that they could improve on, is the type of insole that they use in the shoe. So this is the insole from the Cloudmonster. Now this is a shoe, remember, it's marketed as a maximum cushion kind of shoe from this brand, and it's really the shoe in their lineup that you would reach for if you're looking for something padded and comfortable. But the insole that they give is this flimsy, almost paper thin kind of sponge that's got no real structure. I don't know if structure is the right word. It's got it doesn't offer much cushion. You're almost feeling the base of the shoe when you put it on. This thing can only be a couple of millimeters in thickness, all the way from the front to the back. Especially in the heel. This is not doing you any favors in having an insole. It just doesn't let you feel the hard base of the shoe as much. But I'll compare this to something from Saucony Ride 15, a shoe that at MSRP is $30 less than the Cloudmonster. the Saucony Ride 15 is not marketed as being a premium shoe in the Saucony lineup either. It's just an everyday kind of running shoe. And the insole in that, I hope you can see the difference here. It's at least twice as thick, if not more. And the type of foam used in this insole, you feel it giving some spring back compared to this one here that just feels dull, it just feels dead. I do think that the insole is something that could have been improved in this shoe, and that is something I noticed straight away. Despite that, it's still the best feeling On shoe that I have tried in comparison to the other two models, and I would think it is probably the best shoe at first impressions, the first time you put it on, in the entire On lineup, with the exception of the newly released Cloud Surfer that is getting amazing reviews for how soft and springy that is. But at the time, I do think this was one of the premium models from On. Great, so those are my first impressions, just what I felt when I first put my foot in here. I walked around the shop, walked around the house a little bit. I now want to tell you what it's felt like on the foot when I actually run with it. And I've run close to 130 kilometers over this time. My longest run in this shoe has been about 20 kilometers. I've used it for runs ranging anywhere between 5k all the way up to 10k as I accumulated that mileage in this shoe. My expectations with this shoe, before I tell you what I actually felt, it would be somewhat springy. I was expecting quite a bit of energy return from these pods over here, in combination with what On called this speedboard. If you see that right in there, there is a nylon plate running through the base of the shoe underneath the midsole. That same speedboard was there in the original On Cloud Boom, marketed as a feature of the shoe that gives it a springiness or helps improve speed. So I was expecting that kind of springy, high energy return feel from the shoe. I was also expecting these pods to be highly absorbing of impact, and I expected the shoe to be somewhat easy on the legs, especially compared with something like this from the On family or with my general daily trainer. I did expect to get some cushioning effect from these pods. So when I actually did run with it, the first thing I would say that was far from my expectations was the feel. This shoe was hard. It certainly was a lot harder than what I was expecting with this much of a height in comparison to other shoes from On. It didn't feel any softer than what I had run with in the past, which was very surprising considering how it's marketed as running on clouds. They even got a picture of a cloud here on the sole, right there. And this is not a cloud-like feeling at all. It's pretty hard. Every step I take in it, I feel a kind of vibration transmitting through the leg somewhat, and the faster I was running, the more of an impact of vibration I'd feel on the lower part of my leg. I wouldn't say it hurt my joints or caused any problems per se, but it was just very hard on the legs, especially on the calves and the shins. And if I use this solely for 2 or 3 runs in a row, I did start feeling like I'm getting shin splints with it. So then I'd end up putting it away and using my other shoes, my older shoes, until that feeling went away. And that's why it took me so long to build up to 130 kilometers on this shoe. I would say that it is a faster shoe. It's rather than being a recovery, easy day run shoe. I think the harder feeling, the springboard or the speedboard that they have here, it does make it feel like a little more aggressive shoe, and you do feel like pushing the pace up a little bit. If I would do a run in this shoe, let's say I tend to do a 5k run, without looking at the watch, without looking at my pace, those times did tend to be a little bit faster than what I'd get out of my normal daily trainer. So it is somewhat faster shoe than I was expecting, but definitely not a shoe I'd pick for actual tempo work, particularly because of how hard it felt on the joints, or not the joints, on the shins. I would also say that because of that vibration I was getting through the lower part of the leg, I needed more recovery from the shoe. So it wouldn't be too often that I'd use this for consecutive runs, and several weeks would actually pass until I'd actually reach for the shoe. I never got a good sequence of runs into this thing. It was just very difficult to integrate it into my shoe rotation and fit it in with the other shoes. The next thing is at 130 kilometers, the outsole has taken quite a bit of a beating, a bit of wear and tear on it. You can see here in the midfoot, the rubber is starting to wear out. If we go towards the heel, quite a bit of wear. It's lost almost all its texture there at the back. In terms of its height of the outsole, especially the rear one, it's almost flat with the midsole of the shoe. So it's a pretty fast wearing outsole, and once that rubber wears off, we'll see how the actual midsole holds up. I do think this is a very solid material and it should hold up pretty well, but the actual rubber, the compound they've used there is on the softer side, and it does wear up pretty quickly. I've got some other running shoes, the Saucony Ride 15, if you refer to my previous video. I've done over 500 Ks in them and the outsole still looks pretty decent. A couple more things I'd point out is that based on how hard the midsole is, and with this kind of stack here, although it's listed as 30 millimeters, it does actually feel quite a bit more than that. If there's any roll in your step, this shoe doesn't offer much stability. It will lead your ankle to roll, and I did feel myself almost twist my ankle a couple of times if running over some uneven ground or over a bump or something. It's not quite as stable as some other shoes that I've run in. It never led to any injuries, but I would think that if I run in this long enough, far enough, eventually I'm more likely to twist an ankle in this compared to in some of the other shoes I have. The shoelaces here, they got this kind of flat texture, like a tagliatelle, so rectangular and flat. It feels comfortable when you first tie them down, but I have had them open up on me a couple of times during the longer runs. I'm just doing a standard knot here, nothing fancy. But that's the same knot I'd use in all my running shoes, and I haven't had any other shoe where my laces are opening up during a run. But with this one it has happened, and sometimes I have to do a double knot or something to secure it. That being said, once I do double knot it, I haven't had that problem, but I just wanted to mention that they don't really stay shut. I guess as the foot moves through here, it does lead to this slipping slightly at a certain point. It's not all doom and gloom though. What I do like about the feeling of this shoe is its upper. I think they've done a fantastic job on the upper aspect of the shoe, the materials used, the feel around the heel and the ankle. Very comfortable, very supportive of that part of the foot. The foot feels quite at home in here. It's well ventilated, no hot spots, no blistering. Very roomy in the toe box and the midfoot. The upper, I think, is very good. And like I said earlier, the insole did the shoe no favors. At 130 kilometers, which on the running shoe is nothing, it's actually kind of got a dimple developing here under the midfoot, where it's become even thinner and flatter than the rest of this. But really, this material just feels dull. And maybe I'm used to using insoles such as this one from my Saucony that feels like it's got some resilience or energy return to it. But this insole is really not doing this shoe any justice. I think for a shoe in this price range, $170, On really could have put something better in there. Great, so 8 months later, how do I use this shoe now? Well, I do still run with it, but it's not a fixed part of my rotation. It's one of those runs where I've got no real target time to meet or something. I'm just looking to fill in the weekly mileage, and just to change things up in my shoe rotation, I take this if another shoe has been washed, hasn't dried up yet, or just to get a different feel of something. That's when I would take this, but I don't use it consistently as part of my training. And I think as my target races for the year come closer, and I'll talk about those in a future video, I'll probably use this less and less when I'm doing training towards an actual event. But right now, when I'm just maintaining mileage and in quite a fun place of the training, I do squeeze it in for the odd run here and there. I definitely don't use this for any long runs anymore, simply because I've got some alternatives that for me are more comfortable for that. In my case, that's the Asics Gel Nimbus 24, not the latest model, but last year's shoe. I've got the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. I think those two do a much better job with the long runs. So because of that, this is just being used for this kind of shorter, the odd occasional daily run that I would do. Where I do actually use it is as an everyday lifestyle shoe. Very good looking shoe, very comfortable for walking around in, and to just have it on your foot for all day. I'll occasionally wear it to work. My job requires me to be on my feet for a lot of time. It's very comfortable for that. I would say for travel as well, very lightweight, very breathable, with an upper that's somewhat stretchy, and if you're in a flight or in a car for several hours, it allows for your foot to swell up a little bit. So for travel, it's a very comfortable shoe. I did also reach for it immediately after I completed my first ever marathon, when my legs were really stiff. This was a shoe I probably used the most for the first 1 or 2 weeks after that, for walking around. It's a very comfortable shoe just as an everyday lifestyle shoe, but not the running shoe that I thought it would be when I first bought it. To summarize this video, I'll give you my recommendations on this. Firstly, if you are considering this shoe, I would say that if you are training for a long distance event like a half marathon or a full marathon, then I cannot recommend this shoe from my own experience as a shoe that I would use for those longer training runs or for the actual event itself. I think there's other options that could be more forgiving on your feet for that purpose. But if you're a casual runner and you may not be running too many times, you don't have these massive endurance events on mind, but you may do the odd 5K or 10K event, this could be a fantastic shoe for that kind of thing. It's a shoe that can double up as a great lifestyle option as well as a good running shoe. If I go back to my Saucony Ride 15, very comfortable shoe for running in, but it's not the most fashionable shoe for a guy in his early 30s. It's the kind of shoe you'd picture someone much older wearing, whereas this is a good modern looking shoe. So if that matters to you, it's a great lifestyle option that you can use. I would also say that at the price of $170, I don't think it's worth it. At that price, there are other options there that have worked better for me and that I would strongly lean towards if I had to go again and buy it. Coming back to that option that I would say as opposed to this, I'd strongly recommend the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. And I'll make a video about that shoe soon, but that shoe is at the same MSRP as this, $170. It's also got a nylon plate underneath the, or in that case in the middle of the midsole. So on paper, very similar shoe, but it just feels way more comfortable on the foot. The foam used there seems to be a lot more springy. So that's the shoe I would recommend to someone to check out, at least if you're in the market for this shoe here. And finally, if this is the shoe for you and you're going to do a lot of running in this, I would strongly recommend looking at an aftermarket insole, something that you can upgrade over the stock one that they provide, because you'll get a lot more joy out of using this shoe, I think, if it has a better insole in there. But if you are going to change the insole, you may want to consider going a half size up. Because this insole is so thin, when you put something a bit thicker in here, you'll find yourself a little bit restricted in the toe box, so that extra half size would allow for that. So those are my thoughts on this shoe. I hope this is useful for you if you're considering this shoe or you're in the market for a new pair of running shoes and you've looked at the On Cloudmonster. I do hope this video will be of some help to you. Thanks for sticking around and watching this one. Like and subscribe if you found this useful. If you agree or you had a different experience with this shoe compared to what I felt, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And if you have other alternatives to this shoe that work better for you, let me know what those were. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.